The Oregon City Urban Renewal Commission for August 17, 2011. Could I have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Neely?
Here.
Commissioner Nacita?
Here.
Commissioner Roth?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Yates?
Here.
Commissioner Peterson?
Here.
Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Commissioner Mum?
Here.
Commissioner Edgar?
Here.
And Chair Walters.
Here. Okay, do we have any citizen comments this evening?
Well,
Okay, moving on to item 3, future agenda items. Any future agenda items?
I have an addition to tonight's agenda, but I don't know whether I should bring it up now or number 4.
probably best to bring it up now.
Okay. I would like to raise, add to tonight's agenda, perhaps at the end of the agenda, a vote on waiving the privilege on the executive session discussions we had regarding the Rivers project, and either transcribing them or putting the audio tape online.
Okay, anything else?
Yes.
Commissioner Edgar?
Thank you. I'd like to talk about, I think, downtown parking. I'd like to see that as a future agenda item where we look at the opportunities that are present and make sure that we're seizing every opportunity appropriate to encourage the business environment and economic development in downtown Oregon City.
Thank you. Anyone else with agenda topics for tonight or the future? And I just wanted to mention that I'm working with staff and I guess this group to come up with some proposed changes to the bylaws. So be seeing that shortly.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, moving on.
No, I'm sorry. I was, it's usually mine.
Yes.
Just a reminder that if you add something to the agenda or you have a future agenda item, there needs to be some form of consensus among
Thank
the
you.
commissioners to add that to the agenda.
Okay, let's.
Or for future.
Thank you. Let's go through those items then. So, do we want to vote on the executive privilege? Any staff concerns or discussion on that?
I think it's a good idea to be on the agenda.
Commissioner Mum.
I was wanting to speak on something else, so go ahead with your motion.
Okay. So do we have consensus on the agenda topic for tonight to vote to discuss the executive privilege, waiving the executive privilege for?
Fine.
Okay. And then as far as future agenda topics, downtown parking? Yes. Okay. And I don't have anything to propose now, but I just want to circulate some information prior to meetings, so I'll send that through to staff. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And Betty had something? Is that right?
The bylaws, I was interested in what you guys were working on.
Haven't worked on anything yet.
And can I be a part of that?
Sure. Everybody's a part of it. Okay. Ready to move on to agenda item 4, adoption of the agenda?
Move to adopt?
Second.
No motion necessary.
Okay. All right. Okay. Looks like we can move on to general business. We have item 5A, storefront grant for the Bank Commerce Building.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Walters. We have 2 requests for storefront grants tonight. The first one is the Bank of Commerce Building at 702 Main Street. This is an application for $40,000, which is the maximum amount one can apply for. If you recall, when we changed our storefront guidelines last year, we upped the maximum from what had been $20,000 to $40,000. And part of the justification was that was when an applicant comes forward and proposes to take a facade of an older building and change it back to its original design. And in this case, we think the architect and the developers have done a good job of that. If you look in your packet on page 9, you can see what they're proposing to do, and you can compare that to the diagram on page 18. You can see what the building looks like today, and I think you're probably all familiar with the building. When J.C. Penney's was there, they made substantial changes to the ground floor facade. They added tile. The type of windows and the shape of the windows and the doorways were greatly changed from the original design of the building. In this case, the developers are proposing to bring those original features back. They're also proposing to remove the tiles and expose the original brick on the pillars that make the center part of the building, and also add an awning. And the total cost for this is estimated at $83,180. And as you recall, an applicant can apply for up to 50% of the total cost. The staff reviewed this proposal, and we have a requirement that before a proposal can be approved or recommended for approval, a score of at least 70% is required. In this case, the 4 reviewers came up with a composite score of 94%, which is pretty high. And so the staff is recommending Urban Renewal Commission approve this request for $40,000.
May I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
A few weeks ago, there was a problem with the gas meter over on the side. Will that be addressed in this facade renovation?
Well, I can tell you, I don't know the particulars about the gas meter, but I can tell you that this project requires a building permit, and as part of the approval and the filing of a building permit, issues such as gas meter would have to be addressed.
Okay.
Just clarification, you have a possible score out of 75, and then it's presented as a percentage, and the 70% that's stated here is what's required, not 70 out of 75 points. Yeah. So, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they all rated very high.
Yes.
Commissioner Mudd.
I noticed that in 2008, they also received a grant for windows for $10,000. Wanted to just make sure those windows would still be intact or preserved or something like that. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, they would be. And, there's a possibility that they may come in again because of the size of the building. Several of the windows on the other side of the building, not on the Main Street side, could also need some renovation at some point. So it's been a bit of an incremental project.
Okay.
Yes.
What was that project anyway, Commissioner? I remember coming through here, but it was for windows.
It was for windows on a different part of the building. I can't tell you exactly where, but I was hoping the applicants would be here.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Maybe you can help answer
That was
that
on the
question.
second and third floor.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to come up to the front so it could be part of the record? Thank you.
I'm Gary Miller. I'm one of the owners of the Bank of Commerce building.
Okay. So I could-
And which city do you reside?
Oregon City.
Thank you.
You want to repeat about the windows again? What you stated there?
Yeah, the grant in 2008 was for the replacement of the original wood windows on the second and third floor.
all the way around.
Yeah, we didn't. The windows in the front of the buildings weren't replaced, but all along 7th Street, and the windows on the back of the building.
Can I ask about these big Greek columns in the front and these historic photographs? Are those original to the building, or were those added later?
Original.
Those are original.
Columns.
All right, so I guess the discussion then rises, because I know this has been a discussion on this board before, especially as we discussed our historic guidelines in the past, or grant guidelines, whether this building obviously is eligible for the National Register, and what's the significance or the effects of us considering a grant for facade work that does not include restoration to the original appearance of the building, which I'm looking at the historic photograph on page 17 of 27.
Thank you.
And it's also on page 16 of 27. And it shows the entry having these two very substantial Greek columns in the original design. And I just want to throw out a discussion, and maybe, Lloyd, since you're here, you can, I don't know how much Main Street's gone into thinking about this, but because this building is eligible for the National Register, it seems to me that in addition to whatever funding that this body might provide, a renovation could benefit from the 20% historic investment tax credit for a building that's on the National Register. And if one of the issues, and I'm sure it probably is an issue of cost, if the extra cost is, a determination on restoring these columns to the original 20s facade, would it be a strategy to kind of leverage both the money from the Urban Renewal Commission and the money from the Federal Historic Investment Tax Credit to do a renovation on this building that is, certified according to the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation? That would be my preference, because this is one of the 2 or 3 buildings that are, keystone signature buildings in downtown Oregon City. And this is the building, this is the facade you see when you come off the historic Arch Bridge. So I think that has to be a discussion of how we treat this building and this application. And I don't know how much we as a city have publicized to property owners how the historic investment tax credit works. It's basically you get a 20% of your construction costs as a check that the government gives you when the construction's completed. And that's, on a building this size, that's not a small chunk of change. It does have to be certified, though, by the Secretary of State according to those, those Secretary of the Interior standards. And personally, I don't know how other people on this board would feel, but to achieve the true historic original nature of this building, I'd be willing to up the ante as far as, this board's contribution to this project if it were combined with the historic investment tax credit, the federal one, and there are state ones too. If that were all assembled into a package, I think we could achieve that historic facade and do it right.
Commissioner Smith, these don't seem to be working very well, so do my best. Thank you.
Have you pursued this at all, the tax credits and stuff?
I've had conversations with Christina Gardner about the National Register. We have not gone into a lot of detail as to what would be required by us to have the building on the register. I have 2 other partners in addition to myself. They're less familiar with it than I am. It's something that we've talked about, but we haven't seriously considered. But it seems like that this project would move it that much closer to a future goal of having it on the register. I don't think it would impede it. But like you're saying, it might be also something we might to look into as far as taking advantage of the tax credit, which we haven't done.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you're looking at coming back again and things like that, if there's going to be more investment, it may be to your in your best interest to do that. Sounds like, you know. So.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, Commissioner Yates.
Just to summarize, the proposal is to do the ground floor where there's currently that green, sort of like bathroom rack tile, right? And you're going to replace that with what, brick? There's brick underneath it?
In our demolitions, some of the exploratory holes that we've made, the original brick is there. We're going to have damaged brick, and our intent is to replace those damaged bricks and most likely remove the kind of the covering that comes over the Edward Jones space.
And how does this grant work? Does you incur the cost, and he submits the full cost to us, and we give him a check for $40,000 if his costs are more than 80? Is that the way it works? He incurs the costs first.
Exactly.
What happens if this grant doesn't get approved? What are you going to do with your first floor?
Well, we're already in. I mean, we've got an eyesore on our hands now.
That's really one of the biggest issues I have with any grant program is paying people like you. I'm a building owner too for something you're going to do anyway.
Right.
You're already into this project. You've committed to it. It looks like, because you've already torn some of it out. So my question is, what would happen if you don't get this grant?
We haven't had that conversation. We've talked with city staff and Dan, and all indications were that we were eligible, and the city wanted us to do this, and the community wanted this building to be brought up to speed. So we were kind of going into this whole idea that we would be approved for the grant. If we weren't, we'd have to reevaluate what we're going to do, and I'd have to talk to my partners.
Commissioner Neely. Oh, I'm sorry. I probably didn't get the... Yeah, I don't think the cue's working. Okay, sorry.
This is you.
He's been,
This is you. Sorry. He's there now.
Okay, I guess, should we go with Commissioner Smith and then Neely? Thank you.
Okay, so my point, I'm going to piggyback on Commissioner Nacita's point. This all has to do with the columns, this whole proposal, and I think that what is here is fantastic, but I think the point that this is one of the most significant buildings downtown is true. It's not only one of the most significant buildings, but the most significant piece of that building was the columns. And so I think this plan gets us closer to what that building looked like in the past. And I think to some degree, for sure warrants the $20,000 and probably even the $40,000. But to me, if the $20,000 or $40,000 that we invest into this prevents those columns from ever coming in, I don't want to do it. And that worries me about spending money on an art marquee. Thank you. The removing of the existing facade and that restoration, I think, is great. But the concern is spending a significant amount of money on a marquee that would have to be removed to bring back the original columns if it was ever going to be done. So I don't want to spend money on things that are blocking the overall restoration of that whole building. But I also agree that I think I would even support going beyond the $40,000 from this commission if I thought the columns were going to come back, because it is that significant. It's probably the most significant piece of any of architectural all on Main Street. And so, the Bank of Commerce building is not the Bank of Commerce building without the columns. And so I would hate to, I think I support any investment into this building that allows either the columns coming back or at least allows the opportunity for that to happen in the future. So I think that's really going to kind of dictate my feelings on it, because they're so crucial. In fact, I've seen so many pictures, and I talk about this building extensively when I do the walking tours, but I've only seen a couple pictures. It's only, until the last couple of weeks that I realized that the columns always came all the way down to the main floor. I didn't know that. Because you see it in most photos with the trolley there, and in the mural across the street depicts this building and the mural across the street. But you don't see the columns actually going to the ground floor. So even if the columns aren't even, put back in a full, I could see the marquee created in a way that supports columns above it in the future. I don't know. I just would hate to see us invest money that precludes it from actually reaching its full potential in the future. But I don't know. I guess we can all talk about that a little bit more. But because it's so significant to the building, it's crucial.
Commissioner Healy?
I guess I'll pose a question. Does the marquee itself, where it's being positioned, preclude the columns being built?
It looks to me like it is, but I have no idea in terms of engineering or.
Because I'm looking at it, and you have the brick structures there.
Yeah, it would, the marquee would, if the columns were to be replaced, the marquee would have to come down.
Right. Right now, I just that was a question. My follow-up would be this. Right now, because you want to take a look at what's inside there, it looks pretty bad, and whether we could deal with part of that restoration in terms of bringing it back to the brick, as long as he holds back on putting the marquee up.
That's a reasonable offer, Mayor Neely. I think it's a step in the right direction. However, I would like to turn around and make a statement. I agree with what Rocky said about the columns and what Commissioner Nocita said about the investment of the National Historic Registry of the building and the types of tax credits which are allowed. To me, this is the one building that everyone sees probably more than any other building just because of the bridge. Mm-hmm. And in downtown Oregon City. And for us to continue to call historic downtown Main Street, we've got to be pretty good about maintaining integrity. And this is almost an integrity issue of advertising and marketing and what we're trying to maintain. And it would be, I would love to see us, if we can't give him an approval at this time, for us to try to come quickly with some type of understanding of what it might take to get those pillars or columns restored in that manner so that we can move on. And I agree with the whole idea of saying, even if it costs us a couple more dollars to make sure, because that we get it done right. This is that important to us as far as that basic appearance of downtown.
Commissioner Nocita?
I think what you may be hearing from the board is a deep appreciation for taking this on, and getting this moving, because it's really significant to the city. And I agree with the mayor. If we could work something out with you where we maybe do this in stages, I'd love to get you going on this. I think there's significant things that can be done right away, such as taking off the little tiny terracotta things that look kind of amusement parky.
The ones with the holes in them.
And restore, the brick, the original brick as like a phase one, and the historically accurate windows, on that first floor. And at the same time we do that, kind of analyze the second phase of getting a cost estimate on the columns, working with Christina and the state and others on crunching some numbers on how it works for you, with the tax credits, both state and federal, and come back and engage in the dialogue some more. I didn't read the numbers close enough. Do you have in the packet a breakdown of just like what we're, kind of toying with as a first phase of the first
the
of the
marquee.
ground floor without the marquee. Yeah.
The marquee hasn't been designed or engineered, so we don't have any hard numbers on that. We were considering attaching it to the existing canopy that's over the Edward Jones space. More than likely, that's going to be removed, and it's going to slip into that opening.
I guess
It's possible we could do something in place of the marquee, do something more temporary. We could still put up some sort of an awning, but something aesthetically that looks good, but something that we're not spending a lot of money on.
Because it'd have to be replaced.
Yeah.
Commissioner Neely.
He mentioned the tax credits. The buildings that were on our local inventory also had a freeze in the taxes, and I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but had a property tax. Is that still the case?
Yeah, you can have your property taxes, but this is a different program.
No. What I'm saying, that's an additional benefit. If it goes on the National Register,
Yes.
gets on our local inventory. In my recollection, the taxes are frozen at that rate for something like 15 years. That's recollection. That's something that has to be checked. So there's some additional benefits too.
Incentives.
Commissioner Smith. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go with Commissioner Smith because he was there first, and then Commissioner Roth. Pardon? Okay.
Okay, so I'm looking at the drawings for the proposed project and the photographs of the existing building. It looks, though, to me that the column issue is more than just the marquee, because the front entryway is brought out a little further
which page are you
from
on?
the original. Okay, so if you look at the drawing, it's page 9, the drawing of the Exhibit B, which is the drawing of what the project would include.
Thank you.
And I'm looking then on 18, which is the existing entryway. So there's the entryway currently is set back underneath that canopy, I guess you can say, and it looks like that's being brought forward, and windows placed in there too. So, in my way of thinking, bringing the columns back doesn't necessarily mean that you have to bring in columns that go all the way to the ground floor, but it could be that. If it's not that, then it means the columns are at least coming down to the top of that canopy or that entryway. So if the entryway is brought out, the entryway has to be able to support the columns being added later. So anything that involves that whole front entryway that is involved in this,
the columns.
right, needs to really be accounted for, because the columns may not come for a while, but we want to make sure what's there supports them if and when someone can put those back in.
I think they should come.
Well, I do too. But so I think it's more than just. Am I right in that entryway is being brought out a little bit? So I think it's more than just the. I think it's more than just the marquee.
Commissioner Roth.
My question is, there's a line item in the financials on number 9. It says stucco at columns, and there's a $7,000 in there. What is that for?
At the base of the columns, the mortar was adhered directly to the cement bases, and that's going to be destroyed when they take the tile off and the block off. So that's all going to have to be repaired.
Okay.
So that's what that is for.
I'm back. I'd hate to have us put in a position of asking him to take a extended period of time, which may require to actually get this to qualify when he's already did some assessments, and the process of the assessments, it looks worse than it did before the assessments were made. My preference is we come up with some kind of mechanism that he can bring that building to look a lot better than it currently is. Well, I don't know what kind of caveats we can put on it, but I wouldn't want to hold it up for really any extended period of time because they're doing some good work there, but right now it looks like it's one of the worst buildings on the ground floor in Oregon City.
I mean, we can all discuss what we think. I don't have any problem with even seeing us approve $20,000 right now to see the continuation of the main floor, the removal of the facade that's there, and restoring the old facade underneath, as long as it doesn't create a situation that
Precludes
adding columns
the
later.
addition of the
I mean,
columns in the future.
And I think even, in giving and awarding the $20,000, leave it open for coming back to go to the next stage of the restoration, whatever that is. Hopefully, adding the columns.
Is it reasonable to proceed with 20,000 and have your people look at the column as a future addition, and then see how that would impact your design, and come back, and what kind of schedule would that entail?
Well, that's a good question. I guess we would have to reevaluate the design and what we're trying to accomplish, and look at what we have in reserves. We have enough in reserves to be able to do what we've got here. If we were to look at less money, I'd have to go back to my partners and have a discussion and talk to the architect and decide what to do at that point.
Any more discussion?
Just to clarify, I'm trying to get back to the document. Did you say that the marquee was not part of this, of the cost estimates, or was?
It was.
Okay. And how much was that?
It has not been designed or built, so we don't have any hard numbers on it, but we're probably looking at around the $20,000 mark.
Okay, the numbers that you have right now apply to what exactly?
Everything you see here, the demolition of the tile, restoration of the brick, restoration of the cement pilasters at the bottom, the recreation of the moldings, the new windows, new storefront, the marquee.
Okay. The marquee is in there?
Yes.
Okay, but you just don't have the cost estimate?
Correct.
Do you think that the marquee can be designed to accommodate future pillar installation?
I think he said earlier no.
I wouldn't think so. I mean, I can't imagine. If they recreated the new pillars, they'd probably be made out of some lightweight material, probably not.
Marble?
Yeah, so
Darn.
it's possible it could be
Paper
built.
mache.
It's possible it could be built to support the pillars if they wanted to put them on top. I'm not sure if that look, what
Right.
that would look like. We'd have to, have some drawings done and see what that
So
would look like.
since you're requesting 40 and you're estimating that the marquee itself is 20, just by subtraction, it seems that you can do everything else besides the marquee on 20.
It's possible if we don't do the marquee, the design will change. We've got that existing kind of covering over the Edwards Jones space that comes out about this far from the building and then it wraps.
Right.
So we'd have to figure out what happens there and if that's going to look, what that's going to look like if we leave it there. So I like the look of the marquee. I like that was kind of one of the signature things that we really liked about the remodel. And to leave that off, we'd have to look at doing something that really, looked good.
Oh.
I don't know what that would be.
I think the columns would do that.
Well, yeah, they probably would.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the columns would cost or what would be entailed in doing that.
Commission Chair, I would like to make a motion that we approve the $20,000 as an initial part of this grant, with a commitment for us to move to a second part and even possibly a third part. But this initial part would be part of our contribution in completing the removal of the existing tile and everything up to the point but not including the marquee. And hopefully from this, he keeps going and we come up with a new proposal that includes a more accurate restoration to the original image that included the columns.
I'll second that.
Okay. So what's the motion?
I have just a kind of bookkeeping concern. So when we're looking at, what's been approved versus what's been submitted, if we're talking about reducing it by $20,000, I just want to be real clear for the benefit of the public and our applicant that we understand what that $20,000 is. So maybe if that's what the estimate is for the marquee, would that be a reasonable subtraction that we can all track for today?
Well, one thing to consider is it may be a long, long time before the columns get built, if they get built. So in the meantime, we have a building that we could make look, really nice if we don't do the marquee and we have to come up with some design working with the existing, it may not look as good in the near future.
Based on tonight's discussion, do you think that you could go back to your folks and discuss some options and then come back with a solution or a proposal, or at least give us an update so that we can determine what to do next?
That's probably a better idea, yeah. I think if we're going to do that, then we should probably go back to the drawing board and...
With the entire proposal, or for just the portion relating to the marquee?
Well, we'll have to talk to the architect and the contractors and kind of rework the budget and come up with a new design and probably come up with a new proposal.
And how does that impact you?
Well, unfortunately, we're going into winter, and that's not a huge consideration, but it's going to delay the project. And the other thing is Edward Jones has been very patient, and their patience is going to run out here pretty soon.
Commissioner Haley.
To the point, the bricks, to your knowledge, are the original bricks.
Yes.
Underneath the tile?
Look like it.
Yeah.
You can see it.
Yeah.
So,
I wonder in the design, let's say the marquee were to be included in some fashion, if they could be designed in some way that you can have your columnoids, non-marble, they call them representations both underneath and above the marquee. I don't know how that would look on a design.
I'm worried about it being less than a half a loaf. It's kind of like that by the time we get through, I think it's either he goes back to his architects and comes back with something that really represents a new vision of it, or we give them some degree of confidence that we're into it and will agree to be into it up to what he's doing, up to 20,000 right now, as a vote of confidence in what you're doing, and I think I heard around here that there's a lot. The desire is for it to be really back as close as you can get to history as what is, and making it really representative. And the dollars and cents figure has not been capped as far as our contribution to help you make that happen, because this is really important. Okay, and it's kind of like coming back and saying, yeah, we're with you, but the level of importance is maybe a lot more important to this group than many thought it was. And I think that's a statement that we're making, is that it's that important, and we're with you. We'd just like it to be the best we can and not end up in 5 years or 10 years less than a half a loaf. And so it's kind of like if we go into it a little bit and it becomes less than a half a loaf, then that's really not the intention of this group.
I agree.
Can I ask a question of Dan? If we don't approve this, they can go forth and create this without urban renewal funds, right? They don't need us. I mean, if they have their own money, they can.
I don't know. I guess you'd have to ask the applicant.
I think from a legal matter and a zoning,
from a legal
from a
matter.
legal
Yeah.
and zoning matter.
Sure. Yeah. Yes, from a legal standpoint.
Right.
So they don't really have to do what we're asking them to do?
No.
No, okay.
Yeah. If they wanted
Only
to
if they
forego
want our
urban
money.
renewal money and build a facade,
Then they get to do that.
Yeah.
they're
Okay.
completely free.
The other thing I was going to mention is if you did take the marquee out, it takes the project from 80,000 to 60,000, and the 50% match would give you 30,000, not 20.
Commissioner Shaw, and then Commissioner Roth.
You can tell our enthusiasm for this project here, but I guess I'm a little curious about saying, here's $20,000 or here's $30,000 without seeing a little itemized little thing here.
Absolutely.
So and we're kind of second guessing the elevation of this building, what we're talking about, with marquee, without marquee, with pillars, without. But I think you can understand the direction we'd like it to go. And if you could go back, like you were speaking about, going back to your architects and contractors and coming up now with a little better elevation of what we're thinking about too.
Well, I think the picture pretty much restores the building to its original look, except for the area under the marquee. So that's really what we would have to redo.
The most important part of the building. The
Yeah.
most crucial part of the building.
Right.
So what the new look would probably end up meaning is not investing a lot of money into this area, so that in the future we're not throwing good money after bad if the columns do come in. So more than likely everything would be the same that you see here, except in place of the marquee, what we would probably try to do is work the existing structure that's over the Edward Jones space to leave it there. Or possibly putting up some sort of cloth awning or some
And that's
less
what I was-
expensive awning
yeah.
or something that we're not spending as much money on that would go over that space.
Knowing that the end product is going to be columns and
Correct.
everything. And that's what I was going to bring up, is maybe a fabric awning of some kind that we see downtown.
So probably what we wouldn't build the storefront out. We'd probably leave it recessed like it is now.
Okay.
And then the roof structure would either stay there like it is, or a more temporary awning would be built. So, an idea is we can go back to the drawing board, come up with some ideas, or I'm not sure how you want to proceed at this point. But the look would probably, it's going to change.
We have a few more comments. So, Commissioner Roth.
My question is, I'm not that familiar with the National Historic requirements, the preservation. So how much of the restoration has to be true to the original to qualify for that. So would that mean that
There's a
those costs-
there's a certification process, and it's certified according to standards that are promulgated by the Secretary of the Interior. And one of the considerations is like integrity of the original.
So
I think without the columns, I can't see this building being
Yeah.
nominated to the National Register,
Okay.
because that represents too much of a loss of integrity.
So could that?
I think it would.
You,
When I talked to Christina about it, I think it was eligible for nomination without putting the columns back in. And I can confirm that, but
Yeah.
I think that she said that wouldn't be a requirement.
Well, that means we have a really lax state historic preservation office.
I'm
Yeah,
offended,
exactly.
I guess.
Commissioner Peterson.
Yeah, well, I guess I sit on this other end of the spectrum where I see how nice it could be based on what you're proposing, and I was prepared to vote yes. I don't know that we're there, but I'm looking at the numbers. I'm looking at if we pull out the marquee, we're to 60, but there's still going to be some incremental cost beyond. It's not going to be, we're eliminating 20 grand and we're at 60. There's going to be maybe the awning now is an extra 5. So now we're up to 65 or 70. So what I was thinking is, maybe we grant a 50-50 matching grant, and we put a cap of, maybe it's still capped at 70 or 80 or 65, but it allows you to do something that's more temporary, less expensive, but still tasteful. And with this marquee, it kind of mirrored the roof with the architect kind of matched some of the historic features. So he was doing it to respect what the building was. So I'd like something done tasteful, and I don't want to delay this at all because I think it's so crucial. And tenants, I understand the tenant plight pretty well. So that's just my 2 cents. I know I sit on a little different spectrum on this issue, and I do value the columns, but this is such a move in a positive direction that I'm happy to take what I can get for now, and with the hope that you move towards columns in the future, but at least we're taking it to just an infinitely better level today, and I think it still respects the historic nature of the building, and some of those, the marquee might not be original, but I noticed features that tried to pick up on some other aspects of the building, so I appreciate that.
Yes.
Did you take this before the Historic Review Board?
Doesn't have to.
It's not required.
Isn't this building considered to be a historic? It's not one of the
Nothing
historic buildings?
downtown is.
No,
Downtown is not a conservation.
Nothing downtown except the ones that are in National Register.
Welcome to our
Just
world.
like, it's a complete joke.
Yeah,
but
so
none of the downtown buildings
houses
are
would be would qualify, but this building does not.
There's only like 2 buildings downtown,
Yeah.
I think, that do.
And
One or
that's because they
2.
went on the National Register.
Yeah.
Yeah, the local inventory
Which
never
is
went into the
unbelievable,
downtown
but-
area.
Commissioner Neely.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you a question.
Preserve
The
America.
question was this: you've made some suggestions that I think I could support. I'd like you to extend the vision onward, and the question I was going to ask is, how much more cost to make an architectural consultant? How much more cost would that be for the consultancy piece?
To come up with another sketch, another drawing?
I'm not inhibiting what you're proposing, except that you'll do something else with the marquee, but to take another step to basically encourage you to take that next step. You know roughly what those costs might be?
can't remember what the hourly rate was. But I think we're probably at about $1,800 at this point.
Yeah, I'd like, even, because of the condition we're putting on, I'd like to encourage us to look at the minus marquee portion, fund the 50% of that, right? And then an additional amount for an architect to look at further design.
That would include the columns.
That, yes.
Oh, yeah, I support that, sure.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
It kind of pushes it up.
I will withdraw my motion that's on the table to go with that. If somebody wants to.
Just need to clarify that our storefront grant program doesn't allow for design fees, but if you want to make a note of that and acknowledge that exception, then you can.
Well, we can acknowledge an exception and fund it to up to
Yes.
2,000 or something. I'll try. Taking out the cost of the marquee, I move to support 50% of the cost plus up to 2,000 additional dollars funding for architectural consultant to look at the rest of the building, including the columns.
What was the amount of the consultants?
No more than 2,000.
Madam Chairman? Commissioner Edgar withdrew.
Well, the second has
Did
to be
Commissioner Nacita wish to withdraw his second?
Yes.
Do you want a second, Mike?
I defer to Commissioner Mum, who seconded for
Oh,
you.
okay.
Okay, so is the motion clear?
I believe so. If I need clarification, I'll
So we're talking about funding up to 50% of the cost with the removal of the marquee and up to $2,000 additional funding for a redesign.
Includes columns.
That includes the column. Yeah, that would accommodate the columns in the future. Okay. All right. So, ready for a vote?
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nacita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner Yates?
Abstain.
Commissioner Shaw?
No.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar?
Aye.
And Chair Walters?
Aye.
8 to 1 to 1. 8 yes.
Motion carries. 8 yes, 1 abstain, 1 no. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you again. Okay, we have item 5B, the storefront grant for the Miles Fiberglass Building at 1516 Main Street.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Walters. This proposal is for the Miles Fiberglass Building at 1516 Main Street. The amount of the request is $4,425, which is half the cost estimate for the proposal, which is to paint the complete building. And I'm going to pass around. You have a paint chip and with some colors attached to your staff report, but it didn't come out that good. So I'm going to pass around the actual colors, which is sort of a khaki color for the body of the building, and then a dark blue for the trim elements of the building. So I'm going to pass that around. And staff reviewed this and came out with a percentage of 71%, which is just barely above the required 70%. So we did recommend approval of this grant. And I know that part of the cost is not only the painting, but the building has a coat of stucco on it, and a lot of that is chipping, so there'll be some repair of that surface also as part of the painting.
Anybody?
I'll lead in.
Okay, Commissioner Neely.
This would be a nice second step to something that has already occurred there, right across. I think it's next to 17th Street, but there's a roofing company that did a very nice paint job.
Wood feathers.
Wood feathers, that's right, and it looks tremendously better than what it did before, and this is kind of a step coming the other direction in terms of an area that's really basically industrial now, even though we might have changed the zoning on it. And I really like to encourage essentially the beautification of that particular area to start getting a footprint on the northern segment. Since, however, the vote was so close to 71%, I guess I'd like to explore the staff concerns that brought it down that far.
Well, one of our lowest ranking is sitting next to me.
Well, I know that.
Spot or nothing, Nancy.
So you get to be the bad guy.
I'm the bad guy. I have had experience in downtown Oregon City where we've used urban renewal dollars to just paint a building without doing a full restoration on the surfacing or whatever, and I'm not an expert on this stuff, but to find that the money we've invested really it's not a particularly long-term investment where it looks like it needs to be redone again because we didn't get to the bottom of the surface restoration. So I had trouble with the sustainability aspects of this, and that was my main issue.
Yeah, I think part of that was that some staff felt that this is a maintenance issue that occurs every so many years.
Right.
But then on the other hand, there was a lot of discussion about how it would improve the area, and a lot of the things that Mayor Neely brought up was, just improving the appearance of the north end.
But I still I stayed with my position on its maintenance. People need to take care of their property, but I obviously, I think I was the most strict on the scoring, and the other staffing was more supportive of the project.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
My concerns are the same. On the one end, it's on the end of Main Street that needs more help, probably in a lot of ways than the core of downtown. But I think with the projects that are going to come to us, and the ones that have already come to us, like the one that preceded it, this one this evening, every dollar counts, and we don't have a huge amount of money in this program, and so even $4,000, if we give multiple $4,000 grants for painting and stuff, those would add up to probably another project that are going to be significant in a longer term, even as so much as maybe $2,000 for relook at a design. So I think in that, and looking at it like that, I think I'd rather see us, conserve the funds that we have to projects that we really see are important. And there's some major projects, I think, coming our way that we won't even if we give all our money to one project, we wouldn't have enough to really tackle it. And so I think we're really going to have to start looking and measuring these projects against each other and determining which ones are really, really significant and which ones are good but aren't really fulfilling our full purpose. So in one way, I do think that end of Main Street needs help, but I would like to see our money spent more than just paint.
Commissioner Roth.
My concern is in looking at the lease, and granted the lease is between Miles and Miles, but it's up in May, so it's less than a year before the lease is up on that, and I would be concerned about putting our money into something that there's no future.
Thank you. Commissioner Neely.
I had one experience. I won't mention the property. Anybody that was around at the time probably know where we did give a painting grant, and afterwards, although they painted it, I didn't see much difference in it. This hour brings out certain details, I think, in the trim features and so forth that would make it stand out some. I'm somewhat ambivalent. I mean, if we don't have the support for it, we don't have the support for it, but it would make the area look a lot more attractive than it is.
Do we have an update on the budget that's available? Are we at the full?
Yeah, we actually didn't spend all of last year's budget, so we have $140,000 for this.
That's what I thought. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Shaw?
Well, that's in your point there, Commissioner Neely, about other painting projects. Has there only been one, or we had other painting projects come through here just for paint?
Well, last one we had was just across from City Hall. Although they did a little bit of work with some windows, but that was primarily painting.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I kind of like, this is $4,000, and I think it's an upgrade down there. It just would continue our efforts down there and start pulling that together down there. So I don't have a problem with spending the $4,000 on paint. So for them. I'll make a motion. We approve storefront grant for Miles Fiberglass building.
I'll second.
Call for the vote.
Commissioner Smith?
No.
Commissioner Nocita?
No.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Yes.
Commissioner Yates?
No.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar?
Aye.
And Chair Walters?
No.
6 yes, 4 no. Motion passes 6-4.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 5C, allocation of urban renewal contingency funds.
Yes, tonight we have 2 requests for contingency funds. If you recall, back when we had the original budget discussion for urban renewal, we had $393,000 in our contingency, and then later we allocated $200,000 of that for a visioning process. So right now we have a balance of approximately $193,000 in our contingency fund. These 2 proposals together would take us a little over that amount. So if you decide to grant these, we'll have to discuss the possibility of maybe taking some of the money out of the $200,000 for visioning and applying it here. If that is an option you could consider. The first grant is, or the first request is for $125,000 for repairs to the Ermitinger House, and that would match a commitment that we have from the general fund for the same. And also, we've been working with the City of Portland for a grant of approximately that amount. So that would hopefully provide the funding for that. Then the second request is a total of $105,000 for a study of the alleyways off of Main Street in downtown and construction of an alley pedestrian improvement on the 800 block. That's the summary. Scott Archer is going to give you a brief summary of the proposal for Ermitinger, and then Nancy Crushauer will have also a brief presentation on the alley study.
Can I ask a question before we start?
Yeah.
Did you say $105,000 for a study for one block?
A study and construction. Actually, the biggest cost is the construction. Yeah.
I want to be in that business.
I'll study it.
Thanks for the introduction, Dan. Urban Renewal Commission, I'm just going to briefly run through a presentation about the Ermitinger House and the purpose for the request. Some of you may have seen parts of this, or at least heard parts of this. Some may not. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody understood clearly what the circumstances are. If you want to switch your monitors to the presentation screen, I think you can watch this PowerPoint. First of all, before I run through this presentation, a reminder that the restoration and preservation of the Ermitinger House is one of the City Commission's goals. So I know at least 5 of you are probably likely supportive of the mission that we're talking about here. Whether or not you're supportive of using the urban renewal dollars is another question. But Dan already mentioned that we're doing a comprehensive process to put together a funding package. We're roughly looking at about $750,000 to do the preservation and restoration to the level that it needs to be done for the house. The City Commission has budgeted $125,000 in the current budget year. We're currently working towards a similar match with the City of Portland. It's not a done deal, but we're making, I think, headway, and we're hopeful. We're in the process of seeking a variety of grants and looking at a number of other funding sources, but this request with the Urban Renewal Commission funds would certainly go a long way towards meeting that financial goal, leveraging our commitment also matched with the City Commission's funds that are already in place. That would make a total from the city of $250,000. That's a significant commitment. Then that shows other potential partners that you're making a significant commitment and not just asking for all of the money, if you will. It helps us a lot with our grants, matching and seeking other funding opportunities. And I think with the Ermitinger House and the situation that we're in, and if we can restore that and get that back open, it obviously lends itself to a lot of tourism connections and bringing people in. And I think ultimately I think there can be a connection made there with some economic development types of things, as you can imagine with tourism. So with that, I'm going to run through this fairly quickly just for time purposes here. If you have any specific questions, I can stop, or I can just catch those at the end of this. But this is a presentation that we're using for putting this presentation in front of our other potential funding partners, the City of Portland, some granting opportunities. We use this at what we call an Ermitinger House Summit with our federal representatives, and so this is something that's been shown in a number of different settings and will continue to be so. So the Ermitinger House, at least officially, was on record, was built in 1845. An older photo of it there. We actually are finding some information that may lead us to think it's even a year or two older than that, but that's the official record. Francis Ermitinger was very significant in the Hudson's Bay Company in Oregon City's early history. There's also a connection with the John McLaughlin House, and Dr. McLaughlin, he was married to McLaughlin's granddaughter.
Dr. McLaughlin was not married to his granddaughter.
No. That's correct. Thank you for that clarification. I didn't mean what I said to sound that way, but Mr. Ermitinger was, however.
Yes,
was the point I was making. I'm going to move right along from that. I think one of the most significant things that people know about is the famous coin toss that happened in 1845, and it was either going to be Portland or Boston, and of course Mr. Pettygrove won that toss, and therefore it's named Portland from his former original hometown. The event occurred in the house. Actually on the far left and far right are Mr. and Mrs. Harding, dressed up in their period clothing, and those folks of course have been very instrumental in us keeping the house going for so long. The house's original location was down, I think, around 5th and basically 5th in the river. It kind of is at the location where the mill site is at now, or the former mill site. There's a couple different photos of that, and obviously
the Elks Lodge.
Thank you.
Elks Lodge.
Right, where the Elks Lodge is at.
Site.
Yeah. Thanks. And obviously that area tends to flood, and it was figured out that wasn't a great location for that house because it got flooded on, I think, numerous occasions. The first of its two moves, it went up partway up the hill to to its location shown on the arrow there, and stayed there until 1986. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. These are some photos of the house at its second location. 11th and Center is the specific where that was at. It was basically just a private residence. I'm sure it changed ownership a few times during that time. And as you can see from those photos, it started to show some signs of not great care. In 1986, the house moved for its second time to its third location and its final location where it's at today. Let's see, some of this stuff I'm just going to kind of breeze over and not really spend time on, but basically that second move was predicated by the very well-known Oregon preservationist Ruth McBride Powers, and she essentially rescued the house from its situation and purchased it and paid for its move, and worked out an arrangement whereby it became the city's house, as so long as it would be a public museum. There's Ruth McBride Powers actually sitting in the one of the rooms of the house. She saved a number of historical buildings in the state of Oregon, but she called the Ermatinger House her swan song. And like I said, she invested over $100,000 of her own money, and that was quite a legacy. So after the house was moved to its current location on a city-owned lot, it was restored, and the intention was to restore it back to its original look. Some of the work being done on that. And then in 1987, as was the commitment from the city when it was acquired from Mrs. Powers, the house opened as a public museum in 1987, and it continued to operate as a public museum all the way through our time that we had to close it towards the end of this last calendar year. It's significant for a number of reasons, some of which we've talked about. It complements the McLaughlin House, both in style and also the connections that I talked about with Dr. McLaughlin. It's believed to be the only flat-roofed federal-style house. It's the birthplace of the naming of the city of Portland. It was listed on the Historic Register in 1977, and it's believed to be, we know for sure it's at least the third oldest house in Oregon, and again, there's a little question about that date, and it might even be possibly the second oldest house in the state. So where we're at now, as you know, the house is boarded up and had to be closed to the public due to significant and what we call urgent structural concerns. We did a master plan, the city did a master plan going on 10 years ago in 2002 that at the time identified a number of issues, and basically is a restoration plan that would guide the city in how to preserve the house. And over the time period since 2002, the city has attempted to address some of the most urgent items. However, it just basically wasn't a priority, at least funding-wise, and that definitely hindered the ability for the city to take care of it the way that it probably needed to be. And again, in late 2010, we discovered the structural issues, but they had advanced to what we called an immediate threat level, and the building had to be closed for safety reasons, and that's the condition it remains in now. In May of this year, the house, and this is a very, very significant designation, was given. It was added to the Historic Preservation League of Oregon's list of most endangered places. It was the top one. It's on the top 10 list of most endangered places in the state, and it's the oldest of the structures on that list. And without further intervention, the house is structurally compromised that it could fall in on itself. Now, we have done some emergency shoring. It is stabilized, but that's more temporary, and it's not a permanent solution. And this is from this is just a screenshot from the Historic Preservation League's website that shows our listing on their 2011 top 10 list. I guess it's a good bad list. top 10 list that you don't want to be on, but it's good that we're on that list because it has brought a lot of attention our way, and we've already seen some benefit from that. These are just some photos of some of the structural damage, foundation issues. The floors have moved below the wall because of some of the those issues. That's not the way that a house is supposed to sit on a foundation. That's not a good thing. Cracking in the foundation, which we actually measured over the course of several weeks, and it cracked further over a short amount of time. That's significant. You don't usually see cracking that occurs that fast. It usually happens over the course of years. As I said, the cost estimates to fully preserve the house are at about $700,000. It's probably more like roughly $750,000, and we've already committed through our city's general fund the $125,000. That's the house today. Although we have taken out those are dramatic sound effect that somebody put into that.
That's to wake up people if we make.
That's right. Exactly. We're going to wake you up and then ask you for money right at the end of the presentation. What I was about to say was the windows there are we had to put plywood in. As you know, we are restoring the windows, and the windows were taken out, and then we discovered all these issues, and we don't want to put them back in because they may be damaged. So we had to do some temporary window coverings. We've actually put in a little bit nicer looking temporary windows just to do a better job of weatherproofing the house. So this is kind of the big question and the purpose of this presentation, and we're going and seeking these different partnerships is, how do we save the Ermitinger House? And it really comes down to money, and I've already talked about a lot of that. We are in the process of forming a consortium of partners. This includes our own city, of course. We're seeking assistance from the City of Portland, the county, the National Park Service, our representatives, Congressman Schrader, our two senators, Wyden and Merkley, and also others. We've pledged $125,000 in this current fiscal year. It's the future of the house is in crisis. We're trying to emphasize that and make sure that people understand the urgency here. One of the things that the second to last bullet point there that we want to point out is that, and this was where the partnerships come in, is we, the city, have been responsible solely for the management and the operations and the upkeep of the Ermitinger House since we took it in 1986. And it's important significantly to Oregon City, but it's also significant to the City of Portland, it's significant to the county, it's significant to the state of Oregon and all of our citizens, and really to the United States of America. So we're trying to make the point that we've bared the full brunt of the burden since '86, and we'd like to share that burden with some other partners, and that's why we're asking people to step forward and to help us out. But we are putting our money where our mouth is, and that's what the purpose of the request of the funding to the City Commission, but also now to Urban Renewal. And that's just not a sustainable method for the city, so we're really trying to find a different way to put that money together. So that's kind of our a little program that we're putting on, and I wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to see that. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions specifically about the Ermitinger House request.
You're done. Okay. Commissioner Neely.
One thing that needs to go on the bullets, because it's probably, although it's of interest in Portland and so forth, the fact that it's the only remaining Hudson's Bay Company structure in the Pacific Northwest, and that applies to the Oregon Territory itself, I think brings it to a certain significance level that may affect our ability to get certain monies from certain places.
Chair Walters, just
yes.
a question. I don't know if you want to discuss this item now or listen to Nancy's presentation and then discuss both.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted, because that presentation was there and they had the bulletin items, I wanted to get that one out.
Right.
Is there, so you're talking about the alley projects?
Correct. Yeah.
Do you folks want to take them one at a time, or?
I prefer to take them one at a time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I
Commissioner
think we
Smith.
have another meeting also, so we might
Yeah.
want to look at the time.
How much time?
Well, I think we can take the executive session off and put it after the end of the city commission meeting. There's probably no reason not to do that.
No,
So we can do that.
that's fine, that doesn't,
Yeah.
Commissioner Smith.
I just wanted to make a couple comments, and this one has been a tough one for me, and I'll explain why. Some of you already know why. I've had huge concerns about spending urban renewal money on city buildings, and at the same time, extremely supportive in this effort to save the house. And so I feel like I don't have kids, but I can imagine being in the position where you have to pick and tell which kid you like more. Which one of your two kids you love the most?
Don't do that. That analogy.
It's which one gets funded.
Yeah. I mean, this. So in my mind, I've really had to think about it, and there's some things that make this project different than some of the other projects that we have used urban renewal money to fund city buildings, and so I think looking at that kind of made me really think about it. This house, as Scott has already said, is so significant, and it's in such dire need that if we don't do something, it's at risk of falling, collapsing, being gone forever. The city commission's made a real huge commitment to supporting this house. Probably the most, definitely the most significant support the house has ever had from the city. And we are desperately looking for other support. We're being quite successful in that mission. Myself and the mayor, myself and city manager met with the city of Portland, and we've talked a little bit about that. We're going to continue meeting with the city of Portland. Is it next week? So that's been really significant to go outside of our city and try to realize that this house is important to a huge audience beyond the city. But we have to make a huge commitment as a city to say this is that important to us to get those other people on board. And the way I look at it, we do take a house that's a blighted area. I mean, this house is on the verge of collapse. It goes in line with our core mission that we've been talking about with the storefront grants and saving our history of the city, and really trying to keep that historic quality that we have in this town. In another set, it also opens one of our many closed museums. And it's a small step, but we have multiple museums in Oregon City that are closed. This would open one. So I'm have the same concerns about spending money on city buildings, but I think that this is at such a significant level and such an importance that I don't feel there's a whole lot of other options. We are kind of exhausting all the other options that we have to get finances, and I think we're being, like I said, we're being successful in that. We're going to the Hudson Bay Company, we're going to the City of Portland, we're going to all these places. And so, we don't want to, in the same respect of the building we just talked about earlier, we don't want to get $200,000 short of our goal to fix this house. It needs to be fixed. We need to save it, and I think this is the time that we have to make that commitment. And I think that if it seems semi-hypocritical of me to do so, I can live with that, because every time I drive by that house, I'll know that we saved it. So I guess I'll just leave that up to the discussion of this group, but really consider what we've proposed this evening, and we'll see what happens with that.
Thank you. Commissioner Nishida.
Thank you. I agree with everything that Commissioner Smith said, except that I don't agree that urban renewal money should be used for this house. And I want to take folks back a step to our budget hearings and budget meetings on the City Commission, because I recall very distinctly the budget discussions and how the Ermatinger House came up during our budget. I remember the mayor making the initial suggestions on the $100,000 figure. At the time, the figure of $100,000 seemed arbitrary. It was the Ermatinger House came up rather suddenly, and I appreciated, the suggestion to have a chunk of money devoted to the Ermatinger House, but there wasn't a lot of discussion on more or less money for the Ermatinger House. The number got thrown out, we adopted it, and I was fine with that. The issues I see with this is the issues that many people have raised about using urban renewal money for public property and buildings, etc. I think there's a discussion for that. But I'd like to propose something else, and where I'm coming from is the fact that as far as discretionary funds, I think the city's annual budget for this fiscal year is about $90 million. And I don't know what's the urban renewal's annual budget this year, or the commission's? It's a little over 12. So as a proportion of the entire agency budget, the $100,000 coming from the city is kind of a small drop in the bucket, and the $100,000 coming from the Urban Renewal Commission is it's a bigger proportion and a bigger hit on a limited amount of resources. So what I would like to propose as an alternative is going back to the city and consider first increasing the contribution from the city's discretionary funds, because I think it can absorb that better, and it is in fact the city commission's goals that brought this up. I would go up. I'd have no problem going up to $250 from the city's discretionary funds. So what I see on as far as what this commission has talked about in its goals and what it has to accomplish on not very much money before wanting to take a vote here on something like that, I think we should have that discussion of upping our city commission ante before ever taking a vote on it here.
Thank you. Commissioner Neely.
Well, I want to give some solace to Commissioner Smith. The commission that sat about 12 years ago had people that had that same philosophy. However, when it came to the restoration of the Carnegie, that was done with urban renewal funds. In the case of the Ermatinger House, I think you could regard it as a blighted entity. So I think it fits expenditures from that standpoint. The notion really was, and if the city commission decides to bring it up, that's great. I have no problem with that. The total amount of $250,000 amounts to about a third of what our anticipated costs are, and we figure we'll be in a better position to find other funding if we have that much available. I thought I might just discuss some of the things we're dealing with. One of the things was approaching the city of Portland. The mayor has indicated that he's very interested in it. Karen Morey, I requested her to do some research, and she did find out the Hudson's Bay Company, which still exists, except it's just not the same thing it was. It doesn't track for her anymore. But it does have a foundation that contributes money, but it's strictly almost for projects in Canada. However, there has been an exception, and being this is the only site, we think we're be in a good position going forward, particularly if there's a joint call from the mayor of Oregon City and the mayor of Portland to the Hudson's Bay Company. Partially because even though we're part of the Hudson's Bay Company, I don't know necessarily the CEO would know anything about Oregon City. That's a long history, but I think a call from the mayor of Portland, he probably has heard of Portland before. The other thing is we are requesting, and it looks like the McLaughlin Memorial Association is interested in taking on the submission of grants which go to institutions that require an institution to be a 501c3, which the McLaughlin Association is. And so it's really the feeling that $125,000 is not sufficient to be the major stakeholder in this, and that we coming up with a third of the money would probably put us in a far better position to look for matching funding.
Thank you. Commissioner Edgar.
I go along with Commissioner Nacita in that I think that I agree with Rocky too, in the sense that the priority of this building and restoring this building is most important, but I think it's too early for us and the Urban Renewal Commission to join in when in fact we should be really looking at the city of Oregon City and coming out of their contingency dollars. Anything that does not pay a tax increment, when we put money into this, extends out the life and the term in which money comes back into the city or to the citizens. And in the long haul, this is like painting a building, and that was where I took a long, hard question in my heart about extending out debt, because I just didn't really agree with extending out urban renewal debt. And if there's any way that if the city commission can't come up with the money and they do their debates and due diligence, then I think they can come back to us. But at this point, without tax increment gain, without our ability to get, in a sense, a return on our investment in the part that pays down the debt, it's very difficult for me, and I would really like to see the City Commission address this in open commission meeting first. And I think that I remember sitting there and listening to the debate, and right at that time, I, like with Jim and Rocky, I knew that 100,000 was not enough, and maybe 250,000 is not enough. And maybe at that time, my opinion was it maybe should be looked at maybe 500,000 coming out of the city towards this cause, so that we really we could pay a significant down payment on saving the building and making sure everybody knows we're committed. But that's city, and that should not be urban renewal. It's just, I think we were cutting it short originally, and at the city level, and for us to come back into the urban renewal realm on this, when in my mind some of the things we're going to be sacrificing might be really turning the city around with some parking and some things that we need to correct that will really start the engine going in creating a better environment for downtown and Main Street this is, I don't want to sacrifice what I call the big picture items that I think are going to be, that we're going to have to face. And having the funds ready to be able to do something that is truly urban renewal, encouraging business. This is and redevelopment and new development and creation of jobs. And this, to me, just needs to go before the City Commission first.
Any further discussion or motion?
Scott, how much money are you asking for tonight?
$125,000 to match the commission, city commissions.
And is there a plan afoot to stop it from collapsing this winter?
Yes.
Keep the rain out. I mean, what are we doing?
That's already been done.
So basically, we've done the basic Band-Aid.
That's right.
And so it's not deteriorating further. The termites are not chewing.
We're doing the best we can to keep it from deteriorating further at this point. We're looking more at now the permanent fix.
Commissioner Shaw.
I agree with Mr. Edgar over there that I'd like to see the city exhaust their resources first, then come back to us. I'd like to leave that open, but I, too, as with Mr. Smith, have a problem with putting money into city buildings. But let's keep in mind that people come to this historic Oregon City to visit these historic structures, and when they do that, they spend money here. And that's the only reason I can really validate putting money in this building, because it is kind of a indirectly generating money for the city. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Neely.
I was going to ask, since we have our budget director, finance director here, do you know how much we have in contingency in the city general fund, offhand?
He said $2.5 million for the record.
$2.5 million for the record.
Commissioner Smith.
So I appreciate that discussion. I think I agree, and so I have no problem with doing exactly what has been discussed this evening. I think that's a great idea.
Commissioner Neely.
I move that the Urban Renewal Commission strongly recommend to the City Commission that it direct another $125,000 for the restoration of the Ermitinger. I'm hoping for unanimous vote.
I second that.
Discussion? Okay, ready for the vote?
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita.
Aye.
Commissioner Mum.
Aye.
Commissioner Rock.
Aye.
Commissioner Neely.
Aye.
Commissioner Yates. Commissioner Shaw.
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar.
Aye.
And Chair Walters.
Yes. Motion carries.
Motion passes.
We ever
10-0.
unanimous.
Okay.
Is that the first time we've had a unanimous decision?
I'm not spending money?
Hi, good evening. I'm here to present on the doing a planning conceptual design for several alleyways that are being closed to pedestrian traffic at Main Street. They will still be, at this point, because we haven't done any further planning, at this point, they are still remaining open to vehicular traffic from behind, whether it be Railroad or McLaughlin Boulevard. But what we've been doing is following the Main Street circulation refinement plan, which you probably all recall was adopted back in 2010, not that long ago. So that plan is not sitting on the shelf. And one of the next elements, as you're aware, we're doing the sidewalk improvements, and we're changing the circulation downtown, and that's under construction right now. One of the next refinement items, one of the next elements in the refinement plan is the pedestrian alleyway element. And what the plan element in the circulation plan states: improve downtown walkability and new activity spaces and they can be created by converting alleys to pedestrian walkways. The design should consider lighting along building walls, active edges along the sides of buildings with entries and windows, clear sight lines from parking to Main Street, and limiting access to delivery and service vehicles. So we thought the timing is awfully good to get some ideas about, is this going by its own?
I don't know.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
I didn't mean for that to happen.
I didn't have it set that way.
Now, is it up and down, Nancy?
I'll come look at it.
You see the ghosts?
Anyway, sorry. Technical difficulties.
There it goes there.
We have, as I mentioned before, there's two alleys in the 800 block of Main Street, one on the river side of Main and the other on the railroad side of Main. And then there's one alley in the 700 block that we are going to be curbing Main Street. So the idea is to make it far safer for pedestrians when you're walking down the sidewalks, so you don't have to worry about conflicting with vehicles going in and out of the alleys. ODOT is asking to close the alleys underneath the Arch Bridge. And based on my knowledge of the area and the traffic studies that were done, I recommend doing that. I think we would leave it. What I'm recommending is we put in some bollards that are removable for the absolutely mandatory type deliveries for the businesses. But otherwise, turning from Main Street, going down the alleys is really just doesn't fit very well anymore. So that's as far as we go with what we have done so far to date. And we do see a need to get some concept plans for these three alleys, perhaps even under the Arch Bridge alleys. We may not have enough funding from what I'm recommending for under the Arch Bridge. I just want to talk about it so you guys know what people are talking about. And what we're proposing to the commission is that.
Which one do you want?
I just want to go through it.
I know.
I could start at the first one.
It's got some settings in there that I'm not familiar with.
So the from the beginning doesn't do it?
Here you go.
How about if we just leave it on the big picture? Okay. So is it just going to go by itself?
You just have to. I'll move it. I'll go to the next one when you're ready.
Okay. Go to the next one. Oh, wait, just leave it up like that, and we can just do this. This is good enough for us, I think. So I'm just showing you here that in the actual adopted plan, it shows where alleys should be considered for closure, partial closure. And then I want to show a couple pictures. Go to the next one. A couple pictures of our existing alleys. And I'm showing these pictures to kind of show that, boy, these really need help. And even if we just curb Main Street and pedestrians can now walk on the sidewalk, they just are, they need a lot of help. So to me, this would be very exciting to get. We don't have funding to construct this stuff. We're asking for funding to do concept plans for them and then to do a pilot project on one of them with construction. And to me, this is very, very exciting for the next step for downtown to get that much more lively circulation, not just on Main Street, and encourage some of these buildings to redevelop and face Railroad and face McLaughlin and do things that you see in other places. Okay, now let's go show the pictures of other places. Here's just a real basic kind of a concept plan that we might see come out of the study. Okay, next one. And here's what they could look like. I think this stuff is very exciting. So let's just pan or go through these. So just to give you a sense, obviously ours aren't wide enough for anything like that, but it gives you just a taste of what other cities have done with lighting. Some things are very simple, some are more complicated and more expensive. And just more examples. And then the last slide shows the area underneath the Arch Bridge. So that's the slides, and we were thinking that perhaps the urban renewal contingency money could be could be used well for this particular project, and that's really all I have. It's for you guys to discuss and decide. Thanks.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm in agreement that we can do something with the alleyways, and I'm in agreement that this is positive. Yet at the same time, if I was to put it against maybe the Urban Renewal Commission investing into making sure that that during the Main Street improvements redo, that we have conduit into the ground for fiber optics through the whole part of downtown, and seeing the long-term economic advantage of putting fiber optics downtown compared with this. And it may have been a future agenda item or something, but right now we have a Main Street redo project going, and we need fiber, we need the conduits, and we need the vaults, and we need to have it come up next to the different buildings so that there is no impediments in us achieving the full wiring of Main Street for the type of businesses that we want to attract into Oregon City. So I don't know that that money has been allocated or where we are in making that happen, but it comes back to prioritizations. And how do we prioritize our money to get the greatest bang for the buck? And right now, I could delay this, but I can't delay getting fiber optics put into the ground with all of the vaults and everything necessary at the time we're doing this type of construction project. And this would be an example of taking urban renewal money, putting it into areas where it will create significant return on investment, more employment opportunities and redevelopment opportunities, and just plain jobs. And it's prioritizing. And so at this point, as much as I like it, and I think it's important, I think it takes a back seat to some of the other things that have higher priorities and greater return.
Can you speak to the fiber optic issue?
Ooh, fiber optic and urban renewal. That's a little different from what we're used to seeing in our urban renewal plan. Not to say it can't be done. We are in the process of finalizing a design for fiber optic downtown. We have funding for some of it, and we don't have any final numbers. We have some private parties that are interested in installing it. We're actually putting out letters to all of our franchisees to let them know that if they're interested in participating, we're going to have trenches open, and please come forward if you want to make a private investment in this. So we're really in the throes of discussion about. We all recognize that would be important to try to install as much infrastructure as possible for future fiber optic downtown, and it will benefit existing and future businesses, property owners, etc. We are not at a point where I could tell you how much money we need or who's doing what.
Would this likely be impacted by any kind of fiber optic work?
The
alleyways, yeah.
No, we're intending to get the fiber optic in the ground with the 5th to 10th Street Main project, which starts in January and finishes in October. So I imagine that the concept plan development for the alleyways could take 6 to 9 months, and then construction on if you wanted to do a demonstration project, that would follow. So I would think that probably the fiber optic would be in long before we would be in any construction mode on a demonstration project.
Commissioner Shaw?
The fiber optic, great idea, but would that be more of a city budget problem and not so much urban renewal?
That's really not the kind of decision I make.
Yeah, but I mean, shouldn't it be a city kind of a thing instead of a urban renewal thing?
Well, Brian, I hear you, but it's one of those things. When we're talking about trying to create infrastructure that will create economic development and jobs.
I agree, Paul. But I'm just wondering why can't the city fund it? I mean, it's there. They got the trenches.
Well, if there's some way the city has contingency dollars that could go to this, I think it's very important
I understand
that at this time we complete
Yes.
The home runs to the to the front door.
Yep.
So that we don't have to rip up sidewalks after the fact to put vaults that connect the conduit to the buildings. And so the type of thinking, we're fortunate we have a Main Street business that has that exact expertise, who would like to help make that happen.
Sure.
And if we don't take advantage of it right now, we're losing an immense opportunity. And I would just think it's crazy that Sandy could be ahead of us and in wiring their city. And in fact, it looks like they are, unless we take some steps like this. And this is, I believe, the important part of urban renewal. But yeah, I'd love to see it go to the city too first.
Well, I'd rather you'd see the city explore this more so than urban renewal. I mean, you got water, electrical, fiber optic. It's kind of seems like it's a city thing to me. So anyway, this we're looking at how much are you asking urban renewal for the alleyway campaign?
So based on we don't have any proposals. We did get an estimate from the folks that did Crandall Rambula did the circulation study downtown, and we were applying for transportation growth management funds to get a grant through that group to do the planning, and we didn't get it. There's just a lot of other projects out there. But I used their estimate to as a basis to think that we'd be asking for $30,000 for the planning and design fees, and the planning would be for 3 alleys, the design would be for 1, and then likely, again, this is a very broad-brushed estimate because we didn't have a lot of other projects to base comparisons on. We would be asking for $75,000 for construction of 1 pilot project. So a total of $105,000.
So my problem is that 2 of these alleys are kind of the alleys to nowhere. We're kind of going to the railroad track. Now, one of them is kind of going from Main Street to the river, kind of, so that kind of makes a little sense. I'm not sure about going the other way.
You'd be surprised how many people go down railroad.
Well, I guess that's
on the elevator.
That's what I'm going to have to probably keep an eye on, because right now I just haven't seen the access there. So
and we should work on railroad. We also applied to do a corridor plan for railroad through TGM, and we didn't get that money either. But we'll keep trying, because railroad could be a really fabulous little alley in its own self.
Commissioner Neely.
Already a priority on any of the things you mentioned. It's the one you've mentioned but didn't give the priority to, and that is 7th Street under the Arch Bridge as a pedestrian corridor to the river. We've invested a great deal on the river front, and you look at those parking places that we built on McLaughlin. They're fine. They should be there, but they're almost all empty. There aren't as many people using the riverfront as I'd like to see. But that elevator connection to the riverfront, I think, is an important one. The problem I see with the alleyways is, yes, maybe people go in and out, and I don't know we want them, even though pedestrians use railroad, I don't know that's a preferred method of pedestrian use.
Yeah.
So I share the same concern that Commissioner Shaw. That's right. Shaw. And I even though it hasn't been before us, if we're not encouraging the utilities to look at putting in fiber optics in the process, we probably ought to do it. I guess I have a level of discomfort for covering the bill for utilities, putting in the infrastructure. But I think your idea is a great one. But the other major concern is that the alleyways have historically been methods of delivering goods to some businesses, and I don't know to what degree that's happening on the 3 alleyways.
It's happening in some cases. Each alleyway has different services it provides. Each different alley has different needs, and that's why we need to look at each one individually and
I would feel
concept
far
plan
more
it.
comfortable with going only with the design phase, including 8th Street to the river, under the arch bridge as part of that design phase, and not fund the actual construction. So that there is an opportunity for dialogue of what we ultimately want to see on Railroad Avenue in terms of sidewalks, whether we have to buy some pieces of building in order to make it pedestrian friendly on Railroad, maybe open up store frontages eventually in the future on Railroad, but the alleyways I don't think are the major mechanisms of doing it, sidewalks, but I would support the design phase.
Thank you.
So you would support doing concept plans for the 3 alleys we're recommending and the ones under the bridge?
Yes.
What's the sense about the time?
Well, we're running out of time. I have a comment in. If people are amenable to this, I'd recommend continuing this item. My comment is, on both the planning and construction phase, especially for these small alleys, not so much the ones adjacent to the bridge, because I think those are kind of public thoroughfares. But on these alleys, I think there's going to be a disproportionate benefit to those property owners who are on those alleys if these are made into quaint little pedestrian walkways, attracting businesses to those particular buildings. And I think there should be a contribution if we're going to pursue this. I don't think it just should be the urban renewals tab to do this, either the planning or the construction. If there are going to be people who benefit inordinately by having these alleyways adjacent to their buildings improve significantly, I think there should be some participation by those property owners, and that might be a way of prioritizing, which gets constructed. Those who, are willing to participate will get our participation in those, just like a storefront grant, really.
These are public and will remain public.
Yeah, but that would be my recommendation, is that they remain public.
Thank you.
And I guess one thought would be, we could continue this, that would be great, but I think it's going to be important as buildings come in and redevelop to have concept plans done for those alleyways. So when people come in, we can say, this is what you need to do. We ran into this problem on the one in the 800 block because we had this plan, and yet we didn't know what it was supposed to look like. So getting concept plans in place, I think is really important. And then looking for construction dollars is also important, because I think you'll find, and I'm not sure, I haven't talked to the businesses downtown, but I think we might find that there's not a lot of extra investment money running around amongst them. And I'll just put that out there, because I think it might be difficult to get significant contributions from many of the property owners down there. Not to say it's not possible, Commissioner Nacita, and it's definitely something worth pursuing. But there's a little caution I have in how successful we can be with that.
I'll make a trial motion just to see if we can. If I would move to fund the concept planning for the parts of this proposal adjacent to the bridge only, and allow staff to negotiate with property owners on the alleys to see if we can get contribution from them for the planning of the alleys, as well as the improvements that would be made. Because the improvements, realistically, they would be done in the alleys and on the buildings themselves as well.
So you're talking about just the last group?
Just at the bridge.
Actually, it wasn't even included in this proposal. I was saying that ODOT has now proposed closing the alleys under the bridge, and it's kind of come in the last 4 weeks, whereas we've been working with the circulation study for 2 years. So
think we need more time and discussion.
I would suggest putting it on the next agenda.
Just continuing.
Yeah, just
Okay,
continue.
I'll withdraw the motion then.
Yeah, you're really asking, if you don't have a concept plan, you're asking in terms of investment for somebody to buy a pig in the poke. They don't know what they're
Yes.
getting.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't feel there's a problem with the concept plan, but I think we need to discuss it next time. We're running in the next commission's meeting.
Okay, thank you. So we've got the consent agenda, and then the last item that Commissioner Nocita had asked about, the vote on the executive privilege. Is that something that can wait till next time too? Or?
No, I'd like to vote on it tonight.
Okay.
I just want to pass on the wishes of the city manager. He would like some time to respond to this, and he would recommend that it be continued to the next meeting rather than have a vote tonight. Mr. Nacita's item.
I'm kind of curious whether our attorney's been consulted, and I'm drawing a blank now. It's Steve Janik. Is he aware that this motion's out there?
No, he's not.
I think it would be worthwhile to consult with him as well to see if he has any concerns.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is that okay with you? With the group?
It's up to the
Well,
board.
I think then we should set a date for the next commission.
Yeah, I would like to come
Let's
back
do
in
that.
2 weeks so that we can just
Yeah.
finish this discussion, and I would like to put this other item on the agenda if that's agreeable with the group.
Yeah.
So we would set a date certain for a meeting for the first Wednesday in September.
I think it's
September
the
7th.
September 7th.
would be August something.
It's actually
So it'd
3.
be September
September 7th.
7th. would be
So
our
commissioners aren't supposed to be communicating during open commission meetings, but apparently it's okay if staff does.
next- What?
Were you communicating with Mr. Frazier?
Yeah, he actually sent some information to Nancy.
During an open meeting?
Mr. Frazier and I had discussions about this since you contacted him about it earlier in the week, and he's told me several things throughout the week. And
So you communicated to Dan during
no,
the meeting?
I communicated with Mr. Frazier and
Tonight?
asked him
During the meeting?
Was it during the meeting? Well, yes, it was after, and I just sent him an email wondering if he would answer his email, and he anticipated that it would be brought up.
No, I'm wondering where Dan got his information to bring
I
up
don't
that
know.
point
I don't
tonight.
know.
Yeah, he's talked to us several times
Yeah.
at our staff
There's a-
meeting on Tuesday.
I mean, he is the city manager, and if he wants to communicate something, I have no problem with it, other than maybe we should have it on speakerphone. If I might, I would make the motion that this last item that we had, and the request by James Nacita be put on the first Wednesday meeting of September.
Second.
Do we need to take a vote on that?
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner Yates? Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar? Chair Walters?
Yes.
And consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And yes. We have a report.
No, I just wanted to correct something. I got too many numbers in my head. When I said 2.5 million contingency, it's 1.3 million.
Okay.
That's
We
quite
thought we were.
different. Thank you. And,
Thank you.
no further items on the city manager's report, I presume?
Dan, do you have a city manager's
City manager's report, item 7? No report. Okay, I move to adjourn. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Well,